I'm Celeste Harris, a 68-year-old grandmother who still believes in sweet tea justice, and before I tell you why I packed my daughter's bags onto the porch at dawn, drop a note in the comments. What time is it on your clock right now, and which city is rooting for me? 6 months ago, I opened the doors of my craftsman bungalow to my daughter Amaya and her shiny new husband Desmond. Just until we close on a starter home, they said, all smiles and gratitude. I believed them, because mothers believe, even when belief feels like signing a blank check. Desmond was a walking TED Talk, pressed slacks, Instagram quotes, and that big word, investments. He claimed he could triple the nest egg I'd scraped together from substitute teaching pensions and weekend cake sales. Ms. Harris, he'd purr, the future is crypto ETFs. Let your money work while you rest. I wasn't born yesterday, but I was born hopeful. For Amaya's sake, I nodded, handed him a cashier's check, kissed it with prayer, and tried to sleep. Weeks blurred into months. Desmond's startup Zoom calls morphed into closed-door whispers. Charts on his laptop plunged like winter temperatures. When I asked about my savings, he flashed that can opener grin. The market's volatile, Miss Cece. Trust the process. Meanwhile, my electric bill trusted no one, double what it used to be. Then came Tuesday, 4:32 p.m. The day truth snapped like a clothesline in a storm. I logged into my bank portal to pay property tax and stared at zeros. Not in the balance, but in the wrong direction. Every dime, 137, 600, gone. My screen blurred. My pulse pounded like a revival drummer. I confronted Desmond in the living room. He lounged on my floral sofa, gaming headset glowing, while Amaya folded baby onesies, hopeful hints toward grandchildren. Funds are locked in a liquidity pool, Ms. Cece, he said as if English were optional. My voice trembled, but not from age. You stole my retirement. Amaya's eyes darted, torn between blood and vows. Desmond waved a dismissive hand. It's an investment for our family's future. Our future? I echoed, heat blooming in my chest. Son, you don't even pay the light bill. That night, I paced my kitchen under humming fluorescent bulbs, anger simmering into decision. I thought of my late husband, Franklin, who built this house board by board so we'd never beg for shelter. I thought of Amaya at 10, spending summer evenings snapping green beans on this very porch. Betrayal tastes different when served at your own table. By sunrise, I had a plan sturdy as oak. I drafted a formal eviction notice, researched every local ordinance, printed 3 copies. 1 a.m., coffee steamed in my mug, birds auditioned in the pecan tree. Desmond stumbled in, yawning. Phone glued to his palm. I slid the papers across the counter. What's this? 30 days, I said steadily. You and Amaya will need another roof. His smirk faltered. You can't kick family into the street. I'm not kicking family, I replied. I'm kicking out the fox who raided my hen house and the hen who let him in. Amaya entered mid-standoff, eyes puffy from sleep. Mama, I softened but steel-lined my words. Baby, I love you enough to let you fall forward. He took my money. I'm taking back my peace. Desmond's face darkened. You'll regret this when the market rebounds. I leaned closer. I regret trusting a man who confuses greed with ambition. As they retreated to pack, my hands shook, grief and relief wrestling inside me, but a new resolve anchored deeper. This eviction wasn't the end. It was the first brick in rebuilding a boundary I'd let erode. The first week after the notice felt like living with 2 ghosts that hadn't realized they were dead. Desmond walked my hallways in silence, laptop tucked under his arm like a wounded animal. Amaya avoided eye contact, leaving apology-shaped spaces in every conversation. The house itself seemed to hold its breath. Floorboards creaked softer. The refrigerator hummed as if whispering, finally. But one thing hadn't changed. My savings were still missing. Every evening I sat at the oak desk Franklin built, rifling through Desmond's discarded printouts. Most were jargon, yield farming, leverage pools. But Wednesday, I discovered an email thread between Desmond and someone tagged Crypto King 23. The last line chilled me. Liquidate her stake by Friday, wire to Cayman wallet. Liquidate. My nest egg wasn't sitting in some invisible pool. It was scheduled for burial overseas. Fury burned clean through the fog of hurt. I printed the emails, slid them into a manila folder, and phoned my cousin Regina, head teller at First State Bank. Girl, she said after scanning the docs, he forged your digital signature. That's felony fraud. I exhaled, a tremor escaping. Reg, can the bank reverse it? Not without pressing charges. Blood or justice. It felt like choosing which hand to cut off. But Franklin's voice echoed, we taught Amaya better. Let her learn better again. I thanked Regina and tucked the folder in my purse next to pepper spray and a gospel tract. If you think heartbreak ends with a folder of evidence, don't blink, because the courtroom of family opens before any judge bangs a gavel. Friday dawned muggy. I fried bacon, scent curling down the hall. Desmond swaggered in wearing gym shorts, headphones dangling. Smells good, he muttered, reaching for a strip. I blocked the plate. We need to talk. He raised a brow. About? The Cayman wallet you plan to ship my money to. I dropped the printed emails onto the counter. Bacon grease sizzled like applause. His face drained. Where did you get? Answers, and I want them before the sheriff does. I crossed my arms. Confess to Amaya, return the funds, and I'll reconsider pressing charges. He chuckled, thin, brittle. You have no leverage, funds are gone, and Amaya would never believe you over her husband. I slid my phone forward, screen lit. A live recording was already streaming to a private Facebook group of 30 relatives who refused to mince words. Desmond's jaw twitched. Smile for the cousins, I said, voice honeyed. They're very interested in yield farming. Footsteps padded behind us. Amaya. Robe cinched tight, eyes reddened. Her gaze darted from emails to phone to bacon. What's going on? Desmond opened his mouth, but I spoke first. Baby, your man forged my signature and exported my savings. Read the emails. She scanned, lips moving. Tears pooled, then hardened into ice. Tell me she's lying. Desmond swallowed. It's complicated. Simple, actually, I cut in. Fraud. 20 years, give or take. Amaya's shoulders shook. She pulled her wedding band off, set it beside the bacon and whispered, Get out. He scoffed. You'd kick me out for one investment misstep? One, she hissed. You stole my mama's life. She pointed to the door. Go before I help her call the police. He glared at me. You poisoned her against me. No, I answered, voice steady. You did. He stormed to their room. Minutes later, he dragged 2 suitcases down the hallway. At the door, he paused. You'll regret this when crypto rebounds. I met his stare. The only thing rebounding is my bank account, once you return what's left. He slammed the door, hard enough to rattle stained glass sun catchers. Silence followed, broken only by Amaya's sobbed whisper. Mama, I'm so sorry. She crumpled in my arms, bacon grease and tears mingling in the air. I stroked her hair. Baby, you're home. We'll fix the money, but first we'll mend the heart. Her voice cracked. Where do we start? With coffee in the fraud department, I smiled, retrieving Regina's card. Desmond's exit is just the opening act. Wait until you see his revenge scheme, the detective who shows up with handcuffs, and the shocking secret Amaya confesses when the bank freeze hits. Stay tuned, sweethearts. Regina arranged a 10 a.m. slot with First State's fraud unit, and by mid-morning, Amaya and I were seated across from a square-jawed detective named Vincent Ortega. The bank's interview room smelled of copier toner and stale peppermints. Fluorescents hummed like distant cicadas. Ortega slid our file to the center of the table. "Mrs. Harris, you acted fast," he said, tapping the forged signature. "We froze the outbound wire before it left the intermediary. Funds are parked, pending proof of ownership." Relief fluttered through me, half a heartbeat before he added, "But Desmond wasn't working alone. Multiple logins came from this address. We'll need device audits." Amaya's head snapped up. "Our Wi-Fi?" "Every keystroke," Ortega confirmed. "And one more thing." He turned a page. "We see a second transfer attempt on the same day for $25,000. That request carried your online credentials, Ms. Harris, but it originated from Amaya's laptop." My daughter's face drained. "Mama, I was setting up a joint savings. Desmond said it was a buffer until the market bounced back." She clasped her hands as if they might stop trembling if held tightly enough. "I swear I never pressed send. He must have done it while I was in the shower." Ortega leaned back. "Intent will matter. We'll retrieve laptop logs, but the DA may ask hard questions." He handed over a chain of custody form for my signature. Ink flowed steady. No tremor this time. Outside, April clouds gathered like gossip. Amaya clutched her coat. "Mama, what if they think I helped him?" "The truth has a long fuse," I said, squeezing her arm. "It burns slow, but it always reaches the powder." She nodded, but her eyes stayed haunted. Back home, the silence felt heavier without Desmond's restless pacing. We boxed his remaining gadgets, crypto mining rig, unopened sneakers, a drone, and stacked them by the door. As dusk settled, a text pinged my phone from an unknown number. "Hope the bacon was worth it. Sit tight. Regrets on its way." I locked every window, tugged shutters just in case. While Amaya put on chamomile tea, I rang Vincent Ortega. He promised a patrol pass for the night. Still, I slept lightly. Ears tuned to gravel crunching, hearts tuned to history repeating. At 2:14 a.m., the motion light flared across the driveway. I peeked through the curtain. Nobody. But on the porch railing, my potted azaleas lay toppled, soil spilling like dark secrets. Beside them sat a flash drive taped to a note. "Watch before sunrise, then decide if you still want me gone." I woke Amaya. We booted her laptop in the kitchen, the glow reflecting in her widened eyes. The single file opened to Desmond's face, recorded selfie style in a dim motel room. "Cece, you forced my hand. Crypto's not dead, it's hiding. You'll get your money if you help me one last time. Rally your senior center friends to invest. Triple returns in 90 days. Do that, and I'll wire back every cent plus interest. Ignore me, and that freeze unlocks in 24 hours. I'll drain it, leave the country, and you'll never see a dime." He ended with coordinates for a strategy dinner at a roadside steakhouse tomorrow evening. The screen went black. Amaya buried her head in her hands. "He's doubling down. He'll destroy others." "Not if we nail the coffin shut first," I said. Morning's first light found me at Regina's door. We sketched a plan. The bank would keep the freeze, Ortega would wiretap the meeting, and 10 of my bridge club ladies, each tougher than coffin nails, would pose as eager investors. They'd wear hidden mics beneath Sunday hats wide enough to launch satellites. By afternoon, word spread faster than gossip after revival. Miss Yvette polished her walker like a showpiece. Ida May rehearsed questions about ROI while quilting. They were gleeful. Nothing like a sting operation to spice up Tuesday bingo. As we loaded into the church van, Amaya pulled me aside. "Mama, there's something you should know before we walk into that steakhouse." Her voice quivered. The 25K transfer attempt, they weren't my school loans like Desmond said. I agreed to let him put it in my crypto wallet. I thought it proved I believed in him. The freeze kept it from vanishing, but if charges stick, they'll say I helped. My breath caught. Baby, why didn't you tell me? Tears spilled. I was ashamed. When you evicted us, I realized I didn't just lose a roof. I almost handed him a key to your future, too. I pulled her close. Then tonight we clear both our names. And if shame tries to follow, we'll leave it at that steakhouse, along with Desmond's appetite. The van door slid shut behind us, engine rumbling to life. Down the road, thunderheads stacked like witnesses, ready to light up the sky the moment truth struck metal. The Rusty Spurs Steakhouse squatted beside I-95 like a weather-beaten promise. Fluorescent letters flickered. The parking lot smelled of diesel and fried onions. Inside, the hostess led us to the branding room, really a curtained banquet nook, one step above a stockyard. Desmond stood at the head of a long table, charcoal suit traded for a fitted turtleneck and silver watch, trying to look like Wall Street instead of a motel runaway. My bridge club ladies filed in behind me, hats blooming like camellias after rain. They murmured greetings, playing their roles. Curious widows flush with pension cash. Beneath each brim, a tiny mic-fed audio straight to Detective Ortega's van idling across the lot. Desmond's grin widened. Welcome, ladies, and Ms. Harris. He gestured to empty steak platters. Dinner first, then numbers. Servers delivered slabs big enough to erase memories. My friends dabbed butter on rolls, but stayed alert. We'd practice signals. 3 taps on a glass if he tried to leave early, a napkin on the floor if anyone felt unsafe. Desmond clicked a remote, projector humming. A slide deck appeared, charts jumping skyward, beach houses, champagne. Crypto Spring is not a gamble, he purred. It's a rebirth, and you can buy the first flowers. Miss Ida May raised a gloved hand, voice sweet as cobbler. How does my money return if the market dips, young man? Diversification, he answered, flashing a pie chart. Your funds spread across stable coins, so risk is negligible. Behind me, Amaya flinched, recognizing recycled lies. I touched her knuckles under the table. Steady. Desmond advanced slides until the final page showed a QR code. Scan this, deposit a minimum of $25K, and watch it triple. Phones hovered, cameras pretending to focus. I cleared my throat. Desmond, before we invest, could you reassure us about Ms. Harris's previous contribution? The ladies like references. His smile stiffened. Funds are locked in staking. She'll thank me in 6 months. I opened my purse, drew out a neon pink thumb drive. This contains bank logs proving you forged my signature. Gasps, practiced but convincing, rippled around the table. Desmond's eyes flicked to the curtains, calculating exits. Miss Yvette tapped her water glass 3 times. Outside, engines roared, Ortega's team rolling. Desmond grabbed his laptop, bolted for the kitchen door. I dropped my napkin, the second signal. The ladies stood as one, blocking aisles with walkers and handbags like seasoned linebackers. Desmond darted left, colliding with a busboy. A siren whooped. Ortega burst through the loading dock with 2 deputies. Desmond juked, but polished boots aren't built for greasy tile. He slipped, laptop skidding. Handcuffs clicked before the projector's fan slowed. Amaya stepped forward, tears bright but no longer fearful. Tell them the truth, Des. He glared at her. Truth is relative. Ortega lifted the laptop. Wallet addresses, forged IDs, spreadsheets named Exit Plan Truth suddenly looked absolute. Back at First State the next morning, a banker confirmed the wire reversal. Every cent plus accrued interest returned. Amaya's attempted transfer showed Desmond's login stamp clearing her. She exhaled a breath she'd held for months. On the porch that evening, sun dripping peach over the pecan tree, I poured 2 glasses of sweet tea. Amaya sat beside me, crickets tuning up in the dusk. "Mama," she said, voice soft, "I'm filing for annulment, and I'd like to enroll in the community college bookkeeping program. I want to learn how money really works." Pride warmed me deeper than tea. "I'll quiz you on debits and credits," I promised. A police cruiser slowed in front of the house, Ortega at the wheel. He tipped his hat, called out, "Funds are safe, Miss Harris, court date in June." I saluted with my teacup. Inside, the house breathed easier. Desmond's gadgets were gone, but my savings account gleamed on the screen like a sunrise balance. Restored. And then some. I opened the front door wide, letting spring air wander every room. No more ghosts unaware of their own passing. On the hall table, the eviction notice still lay. Deadline circled in red, now a relic of a battle won. Tomorrow I'd meet Regina for pound cake and gossip. Next week the lawyer would finalize restitution papers. But tonight I savored quiet triumph. Sometimes justice doesn't knock. It sets the table, waits, and lets the thief serve himself straight into handcuffs. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, a storm leaving town. The ceiling fan ticked steady overhead, keeping rhythm with a heart no longer tethered to fear. And if anyone ever again tries to pitch me miracle investments, they'd better come armed with something stronger than a PowerPoint. Because the women of Elm Street Bridge Club now keep their hats mic'd and their ledgers balanced. The calendar flipped to May, and with it came soft magnolia blooms and the rustle of legal papers thick as telephone books. Most mornings were gentle again, birdsong through open windows, Amaya's accounting textbooks splayed across the breakfast nook, my own routine of tending roses and checking that my savings balance still read 6 figures. But quiet has a way of revealing what thunder once concealed. 3 weeks after Desmond's arrest, a certified letter arrived from the county clerk. The envelope felt heavier than its single sheet should allow. Inside was a lien notice. Property collateralized for personal loan, $75,000 outstanding. Lender, Bright Sky Capital. Collateralized by the house Franklin built. The signature line? Celeste Harris, written in curling script I had never penned. My breath lodged somewhere between anger and disbelief. The ink matched the forged bank signature, but the date was just 2 months old. Desmond hadn't only aimed for my nest egg, he'd mortgaged the nest. I called Detective Ortega, voice shaking. He promised to add the lien to the fraud docket, but court schedules move slower than panic. "Cece," he said, "Bright Sky is a predatory outfit. If they worry Desmond can't pay, they may try to fast-track foreclosure. Keep every envelope." I hung up, palms clammy. Amaya found me staring out the window as a storm swallowed the horizon, a bank of bruised purple clouds rolling in from the west. She listened while I read the notice aloud, then pressed a hand to her mouth. "He was still scheming even after you served eviction." "We've got 60 days before a hearing," I whispered, "and half the county thinks the house is already free and clear." That night Amaya brewed chamomile, though sleep felt like a stranger. We scrolled Bright Sky's website, slick fonts, smiling couples, not a hint of merciless interest rates. In the FAQ, a clause glared. Loans may be reassigned to collection partners without notice. Translation: some hedge fund could own Franklin's porch swing by next week. At dawn, I rang Regina. Again, she picked up on the first ring. "'Cause I'm already in the system. Let me see if Bright Sky filed the lien with incomplete documents. Predators get sloppy." By lunchtime, she called back triumphantly. "They misspelled your middle name on page 2, maybe enough to contest." She emailed the scan. A sliver of hope pricked the gloom. Meanwhile, Amaya searched for a consumer law attorney. The first two quoted retainers high enough to fund a small wedding. The third, Miss Tessa Nguyen, listened, then asked one question. Mrs. Harris, would you be willing to let this fight go public? My pulse jumped. Public how? Predatory lending class action, Miss Nguyen said. One plaintiff with a good story can stop a dozen liens. My heart skipped. Franklin had always said, if you get knocked down in the garden, stand up with dirt on your knees and testimony in your hand. I told Miss Nguyen yes. We met in her office, a modest suite behind a taco truck that smelled of cilantro. Miss Nguyen, petite and bright-eyed, photographed the forged lien and cataloged every harassing voicemail Bright Sky had left since the notice. She advised, start a paper trail, record calls. And Ms. Harris, don't be surprised if Desmond's defense tries to claim you willingly signed. By the time we walked back to the car, the sky had split open. Rain hammered the windshield as if determined to wash away any lingering doubt. Amaya gripped the steering wheel. Mama, I can move out if this gets stressful. I shook my head. The house doesn't scare me. Lies do. I reached for her hand, and we just started telling the truth. At home, thunder rattled the panes. I brewed 2 cups of cocoa, adding a dash of cinnamon the way Franklin loved. Somewhere between sips, Amaya asked, almost timid, what if we lose? The answer surprised even me. Then we plant tomatoes in whatever yard we end up with and start again. But first we give Bright Sky the fight of their life. Lightning flared, illuminating the lien notice taped above my desk, a reminder that storms can spotlight the very thing you need to face. And though rain kept falling, somewhere beyond the clouds magnolias still opened, unafraid of wet petals. Tomorrow we'd gather the bridge club, new tapes in our pockets, and a stack of misspelled documents in Ms. Nguyen's satchel, because sometimes justice wears muddy boots and a raincoat, knocking politely before she kicks the door clean off its hinges. The rain eased by morning, leaving the street smelling of wet asphalt and dawn. At 8 sharp, the Bridge Club ladies assembled in my living room, wide-brim hats replaced by plastic folders. Miss Yvette arrived first, walker baskets stuffed with labeled USB drives. Ida May followed, balancing a tray of lemon bars and a brand new digital recorder she'd bought, just in case the devil dialed again. We practiced. When Bright Sky's collectors called, each lady would keep them talking, confirming threats, triple-checking interest rates, nudging them to mention Desmond's name. Miss Nguyen said 5 solid recordings could shred the lien faster than any courtroom speech. By noon, the phones erupted like cicadas. Hold on, sugar, let me grab my spectacles, Miss Yvette crooned, as a collector rattled off delinquency fees. 2 rooms over, Ida May cooed. Bless your heart. 89% interest sounds mighty generous. The mics captured every syllable. By late afternoon, we had 6 recordings, each more damning than the last. That evening, a knock echoed through the hall, slow, deliberate. Detective Ortega stepped in, raincoat dripping. He'd visited Bright Sky's local office with a subpoena. The employees had stalled, but one underpaid clerk whispered a warning. A private investigator was photographing my house. I checked the porch cam after he left. Sure enough, a shadow froze under the magnolia, camera lens glinting. Rather than calling 911, I pulled on Franklin's old rain jacket and opened the front door wide. Need a clearer shot? I asked. Flash popped once. Then the shadow bolted down the walk, splashing through puddles like a spooked heron. Sometimes you stare fear in the face, and fear remembers an urgent appointment elsewhere. The next week unfolded at sprint pace. Ms. Nguyen filed an injunction. Local news picked it up. Grandmother battles predatory lender for her home. Comments flooded the station's Facebook page. Retirees, single parents, even a former Bright Sky employee. Each message added weight to our side of the scales. Tuesday brought a surprise. A courier in a blazer arrived with a temporary goodwill offer. Bright Sky would remove the lien if I signed a non-disclosure agreement and waive potential damages. The pages smelled of desperation. Amaya read Clause 6 twice, then fed the packet to the shredder. Wednesday morning, Desmond called from the county jail on Ortega's recorded line. "Cece, they're leaning on me to testify that you consented. They say they'll drop the forgery charges." "Son, every lie you tell now digs the hole deeper," I answered. "You choose, shovel or ladder." He went silent long enough for the automated voice to threaten disconnect, then whispered, "I'll call you back." The second time, he asked for Miss Nguyen's number, a ladder after all. Depositions began the following Friday in a beige conference room that smelled of burnt coffee. Bright Sky's attorney unfolded a printout of my forged signature, but Ms. Nguyen slid forward the misspelled middle name page and a photo of Desmond signing on a tablet at 2:08 a.m., timestamp courtesy of Ortega's forensics team. One discrepancy is a typo, 3 are intent. By lunchtime, Bright Sky's counsel requested a recess to explore settlement pathways. Outside, Amaya sank onto a bench, face lifted to the fragile spring sun. "Mama," the DA emailed me, "they're dropping accessory speculation. Desmond's plea deal hinges on cooperation." She exhaled, shoulders finally dropping from her ears. I can breathe again. 2 weeks later, a certified check arrived. Principal plus damages, enough to replace every cracked shingle and still seat Amaya's tuition. The lien dissolved like sugar in tea. Miss Nguyen mailed a second envelope, details of a class action now gathering 83 plaintiffs. One small house in Wilmington had opened a floodgate. On the first truly warm Saturday, we painted the front porch railings a pale robin's egg blue. The Bridge Club ladies spread newspapers, humming hymns off-key. Miss Yvette dabbed a stray glob onto Ida May's sleeve. Ida May retaliated with a flick of her brush. Laughter rose, bright and buoyant, carrying every note of the storm that had passed. When the sun dipped, we gathered on the steps, tea glasses sweating in our hands. Amelia held her acceptance letter from the bookkeeping program, stained with a fresh dot of robin's egg paint. "Fall semester starts in August," she said softly. I clinked her glass. "Plenty of time to learn interest rates before the figs ripen." She smiled, then turned serious. "Do you miss 'em at all?" I watched evening light filter through magnolia petals, unbothered by the branches that once sheltered a photographer with bad intentions. "I miss the idea of who we could have been," I said at last. "But I don't miss living in a house where trust paid rent to fear." Crickets took up their twilight song. Somewhere inside, the washing machine clicked off, ready for another load. Life kept turning, steady, ordinary, and priceless. And though a part of me still checked the porch camera before bed, another part finally slept sound, knowing this home no longer balanced on someone else's gamble. It stood on the solid ledger of lessons paid in full. July settled over Wilmington like honey, slow and golden. The house felt lighter now that every lien was dust and every room smelled of fresh paint instead of anxiety. From the porch, I watched Amaya back down the driveway in her second-hand Corolla, hair cut short and confident, heading to her first summer accounting class. She waved the acceptance folder out the window, proof that new pages really did turn. Inside, I sorted mail at Franklin's old desk. Amid electric bills and seed catalogs lay a cream envelope from the district attorney, sentencing date for State v. Desmond Carter, August 12th, 9 a.m. A handwritten notepaper clipped on top. Defendant has provided full cooperation. Restitution confirmed. I exhaled, a breath I didn't know I was still holding. Justice had been slow, but it was finally keeping its appointment. I folded the notice into a neat square and slipped it into my Bible, right between Psalms and Proverbs, the place where cries for help turn into lessons. The house was quiet except for ceiling fan blades whispering through warm air. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Silver streaks at my temples, shoulders no longer clenched. Peace suited me. Late morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Detective Ortega on the step in off-duty chinos holding a cardboard box. Evidence release, he said, offering a small smile. Digital wallet hardware, laptop, 1 silver watch. Court says it's yours if you want it. Value should offset the lien fees we shook loose. I invited him in for iced tea. We sat at the kitchen table where Desmond once pitched dreams like carnival prizes. Ortega pulled out the watch. The face still ticked, oblivious to the hands it once decorated. Auction, he suggested. Better idea, I said, rolling the cool metal in my palm. Community College Foundation as a textbook fund. This will buy more than a few ledgers for freshmen. Ortega's brow lifted in admiration as he jotted the charity details. He hesitated before leaving. You'll testify at sentencing? I'll be there, I replied. Not to watch him buried, just to make sure he sees the woman he couldn't break. After the cruiser disappeared down Elm Street, I carried the evidence box to Franklin's workshop. Sawdust still lingered like old perfume. I set the box on a shelf beside his worn hammer, then traced the groove of his initials carved into the workbench. For the first time since the ordeal began, I let myself speak to him out loud. We kept the porch, Frank, and the girls learning to balance books, not excuses. The room stayed silent, but the ache in my chest eased, the way a knot loosens after the last tug. That evening, the Bridge Club ladies congregated for our monthly game, though bids of spades quickly gave way to lemonade and storytelling. Miss Yvette placed a manila folder on the table. News clippings about Bright Sky's impending class action settlement. Looks like we started a little revival, she grinned, clicking her dentures once for emphasis. Ida May adjusted her bifocals. They're refunding interest to every customer duped in the last 2 years, 78 families. She gave my hand a squeeze. All because you refused to stay quiet. I shrugged. Sometimes refusing is the holiest word in the vocabulary. At dusk, fireflies stitched yellow stitches through the yard while we rocked on the porch. One by one, ladies headed home. When the screen door finally clicked shut, the night felt gently unfinished, like a story pausing for breath instead of ending. I fetched my ledger notebook and flipped to a blank page. Assets. House. Clear title. Savings. Restored principal plus interest. Daughter. Enrolled. Hopeful. Reputation. Sturdier than crepe myrtles. Peace of mind. Accruing daily. Liabilities. Residual trust issues, manageable. Court date nerves, temporary. Balance favored the future. Somewhere down the street, a saxophone drifted through an open window, slow blues turning corners of the warm air. I closed my eyes, letting each note remind me that even sorrow has a melody and every melody eventually resolves. Tomorrow I'd start planning a late summer block party. Thank you, brisket, for neighbors who watched the house at night, lemon bars for friends who answered every frantic call, iced tea for the postal worker who brought certified envelopes with a sympathetic smile. No speeches, just full plates and easy laughter. Victory doesn't always need a microphone. Sometimes it just needs room on the picnic table. I turned off the porch light but stayed outside a moment longer, listening to cicadas and distant laughter, feeling the house settle behind me. strong again, roots deep. And though August 12th still waited on the horizon, tonight was already bright with something steadier than justice, kinder than triumph. Home, paid in full. August arrived like a held breath, finally exhaled, thick, hot, filled with crickets at night and courthouse chatter by day. On the morning of the 12th, I dressed in a navy linen suit Franklin always said made me look ready for Senate. Amaya joined me in the hallway wearing a simple cream dress, hair tucked behind her ears, textbooks left on the kitchen table as quiet proof of new beginnings. At the courthouse steps, Miss Nguyen met us with a nod, her briefcase thinner than usual. All restitution is certified, she said. Today is about closure. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with the particular hush that follows scandal. A few bright sky claimants I recognized from news segments sat in the gallery, eyes tracking every whisper. Desmond entered in a plain suit 2 sizes too big, wrists unshackled for the hearing, but spirit obviously cuffed. He didn't look at us until Judge Wilkes called the case. The plea agreement was recited, guilty to forgery and wire fraud, 5 years with parole eligibility at 3, mandatory financial counseling, ongoing cooperation in the Bright Sky civil matter. Before sentencing, the judge invited victim impact statements. I rose, palms cool and steady on the podium. I spoke not of anger, though it had burned hot, but of the house Franklin built and the trust Desmond cracked. I told the court how we patched that crack with community, law, and stubborn grace. How every dollar returned bought textbooks for single mothers, warm meals for seniors, and accounting tuition for Amaya. When I stepped back, Desmond surprised everyone by asking to speak. Voice rough. He said he'd thought crypto would make him a hero without the slow work of earning trust, and that greed whispered louder than conscience until someone finally shouted truth. He faced Amaya, eyes rimmed red. I loved the idea of our future more than I loved you, he said, voice small. The room went still. Amaya's chin quivered, but she didn't look away. The gavel fell soft but final. 5 years. Court adjourned. Once outside, the August heat felt lighter than the air-conditioned tension we left behind. Reporters waited, but Miss Nguyen shepherded us past microphones with a polite wave. On the sidewalk, Amaya exhaled, then startled as if noticing the hum of traffic for the first time. "It's really over," she said. I corrected her gently. "One chapter ends, others wait their page." That evening, neighbors filled our block for the promised cookout. Smokers puffed hickory. Kids chalked hopscotch on the driveway where Desmond once paced phone calls. Miss Yvette DJ'd gospel classics from her tablet. Ida May's lemon bars disappeared before the brisket even cooled. Detective Ortega dropped by, long enough to shake hands and accept extra ribs for evidence. As twilight settled, I lifted a tea glass to thank everyone. No speech about fraud or trials, just gratitude for watchful porches, for casseroles delivered during depositions, for bridge club hats that hid microphones. Laughter rippled through the dusk like wind in pecans. Later, after the last folding chair was stacked, Amaya and I sat on the porch swing, feet bare, cicadas droning. She opened her final tuition invoice. The restitution interest covered nearly every penny. If grades stay high, she mused, maybe an internship in forensic accounting. I chuckled. Nothing like lived experience to make a resume sparkle. Across the street, a new family unloaded a U-Haul, unaware of the saga their house had witnessed 2 months earlier. Life kept turning, ordinary and unstoppable. I fetched the ledger notebook, added a line under assets. Justice served, interest compounded, and under liabilities. Vigilance, ongoing but welcome. balance, still favoring the future. A breeze lifted the magnolia leaves, carrying a scent of late summer promise. I closed the book, knowing some stories end not with symbols, but with the quiet creak of a porch swing and the soft click of a pen marking paid in full.